Alright you guys, I just want to do a quick video on why the European energy crisis is going to um, essentially collapse the world economy and along with it Bitcoin. How long it lasts is always the question, right? Is it going to be something that lasts 6 months, 18 months, or is it going to last 2-3 years? So I'm not getting into how long, but I want to point out a few things. So if you don't know what the Nord Stream pipeline is, this is what it is. Okay, natural gas comes from Russia down the pipeline, and it flows into Germany. Okay, which is super important. Germany is a larger country as far as gross domestic product than a lot of these other cats. So Germany is very important. And you can see the pipeline feeds into these other countries, Italy. You know, it's important. Now, there is gas available through the Ukraine, okay, but not as much. They can also get liquid natural gas that is shipped in from the US and other countries, but they can't get it in the volume that they would need. Okay, so that's what the Nord Stream pipeline is, in case you don't know, and that's what's happening right now. Is they're cutting off. Russia basically cut them off from that pipeline. Cool. All right, so about 26% of Europe's energy comes from natural gas. Okay, and this is broad. Each part of the European Union will be affected differently. Okay, but overall, this is what we're talking about. So 26% of this of the European Union's energy comes from natural gas. There has been a 610% increase in the cost of natural gas since last year. Okay. This date here is the beginning of the Ukraine conflict. It was actually on the 24th, but this is a weekly chart. So you can see that we had some spikes and then we had the breakout on this gas. Now, when you translate that into day-to-day life, you're like, well, what does it matter? Just as you use electricity or you might use heating oil, in Europe, like here, I use natural gas, but in Europe, even more so. So in the US, we use less natural gas than Europe does. So over there, their stoves, their power plants, their factories, their greenhouses, they all use natural gas for energy. And so even if they were to get it in control, what happens is first the poor are obviously affected, okay? Then you have the middle class and then you have the upper middle class. So what we're seeing now, if you tune into this stuff, you would see in the European news, if you were to watch like their version of CNN, what they have are the upper middle class, the wealthy areas like Essex is one that I saw an interview in, and they're talking to these, well-off people, and the well-off people are canceling vacations. Okay, that's what happens in a recession. We aren't there yet, right? So because we have a global economy, there's two major things playing out here. You have the energy crisis, which in and of itself would be enough to cause a lot of pain for a lot of people. But at the same time, you have inflation. Okay, so those same people that are paying 2 or 3 times what they were paying for gas and energy. Now at the store, they're paying 2 or 3 times what they would be paying for chicken and bread and just basics to get by. So the situation in Europe is worse than it is here, okay? And so you combine that idea with two other main principles, okay, to really understand how this is going to topple things. So over here you have the dollar, okay, and you can see the dollar is surging. Meanwhile, if we were to go to the euro is declining, okay? So as our companies, like Apple is a good example. Apple sells products all over the world, and as those units are sold, they're being paid for in euros. But now the spread between the valuation of the dollar and the valuation of the euro is increasing. Okay, so, and that goes, the euro and the dollar trade very closely, so that's maybe not the best example, but this is taking place all over the world. And so when our companies get paid in a foreign currency, it's got to be converted into dollars, okay? So not only are less people going to be buying iPhones in Europe, even the iPhones that are sold, the actual profit from those phones is going to be less because the money has to be exchanged from euros, which have devalued, to dollars, which have increased in value. So there's this spread between those currencies, and as the dollar surges, this spread gets wider. Okay, so that's important to understand. In October and November, you start to see earnings reports. Because we are because we have midterms and we have no political motivation at this point to solve any of these problems other than to keep the sinking ship afloat, I don't anticipate this energy crisis playing out immediately. But what you want to do, and what I am doing, and why I make these charts and look at these things, is because I want to understand ahead of time what to look for. And so what I'm watching is this is the DAX. This is basically the German version of the stock market. Okay, so you want to keep a close eye on this in the upcoming months. All right, this is going to tell you a lot. Germany kind of dictates a lot of the strength or weakness of that economy. You want to keep an eye on this. Okay, what they're going to try to do is put cost restrictions and caps on energy producers. So on a chart, what you can do, normally it sets to like kilojoules or something, but if you want to know what people are paying, you can go up here and click to kilowatt hour. So this would just be like your bill that you get at your house. So you can see that they, all the way back in 2019, they were paying 0.015. Now, if we look at the increase from then, which is not long ago, to present, that's almost 1,000%. Hard to believe. I actually had to check myself, and because it was hard to believe. All right, so that means that Europe is sliding already in a recession. And so what they do, just like we are doing, is they are tightening monetary policy. they wrote the EU increased the rates just like we increased rates. Now, check this out. So in order to deal with this problem of energy over in the EU, they have to subsidize energy to people who are poor to start with, but likely everybody. And if you listen to their officials talk, they are not fiscally conservative, right? They want to spend. So now think about it. They're tightening monetary policy, which means they're deflating the bubble. At the same time, this would be a time when they would be printing money. So they're in a rock and a hard place. They can't just hand out the checks right now to solve this problem. That's why I'm bringing, this is deep shit, but it's worth paying attention to. So normally they would just hand out checks when you see energy like this coming into the wintertime. But they just had to raise rates. They've got to tighten, right? So the next step for them is, one, obviously get the people's heat going, but what they do then is they're going to interfere with the free market over there, and basically it's already pretty screwed up. But these companies that produce oil or produce natural gas, they're going to start to cap what they can charge. That doesn't really solve the problem, but that's what they're going to try to do. And in fact, sometimes it will make the problem worse. So going into October and November, after November 8th midterms, it is no coincidence that our gas prices, according to our administration, have come down because they opened up the emergency reserves. If you know charts, if you know reality, you know that the only reason those prices have come down is because China continues to lock people down. That drops the price in gas. Nonetheless, they opened up those reserves. On October 31st, they go back to buying gas. Why? Because the midterms are a week later. Check it out, right? See the big picture. So then the US starts buying gas again. Okay? That causes our fuel costs to spike like they already have. None of the incentive for them to keep this shit show afloat is there because they're hoping to get reelected. No coincidence as well that in January there's a whole lot of people who have been on the student loan program. They were now forgiven, but also there's a whole nother group of people who may not have qualified for that program. And those people, they've been able to have like a grace period. I forget the exact word, but basically they don't have to pay their loan during this period of time. And that period of time ends in January of 2023, right? Because they got what they needed out of it. They really don't and never will care about you. They are reptilians. So at the end of the day, where we're sitting, that pool of people that was counting on that extra $300 a month, they've gotten real used to having it. Now they've got to go back to paying that $300 a month or whatever it is for student loans, maybe more, maybe less. On top of it, their energy costs have gone up. On top of it, their cost of living, food, all of that inflation data, it continues to move up. And now they're not getting the government programs because they got to draw money out of the system. So it's rock and a hard place. So at the end of the day, this here is the most important little piece of ground. This is why it's an energy war and why you need to understand it. As far as, what's going to happen with Bitcoin or trading in general, is that even if they solve this problem by bringing in liquid natural gas, these kinds of things, Russia holds all the keys. So you would hope that this would resolve itself, but it can go on for a real long time. This could be a steady grind, and we don't know how long, and that's why I say maybe Russia throws down and says we're over it in the spring and everything returns to normal. Seems unlikely with the way things have been going. So keep an eye on this chart here, and what you're watching for is these emergency meetings, and then you're going to watch the news for when they start to cap what companies can charge, and normally that does not work out very well. All right, so these are real things to pay attention to and to have on your radar. So with Bitcoin and crypto, again, building an ETF position on the short side using Kucoin and riding this wave down because we don't know how deep it's going to go. That's what I'm doing, right? Because a lot of people want to be optimistic and they have what's that called, normalcy bias, right? But if we go back, let's go back real quick. Look at that spike. That's nasty. So they have this normalcy bias. Even if these prices were to come down 100% from where they're at now, essentially the average working person in Europe is really no better off. They're basically at that point able to turn on the stove, able to have heat, versus not having heat or not having electricity. So, you know, naturally, like I've said, and in conclusion, is this idea that Bitcoin is a store of value might actually be tested, because holders of Bitcoin all over the world might actually need to sell their Bitcoin to pay the bills, motherfuckers. You see what I'm saying? Nobody sees what I'm saying. So to you 4 people that listen, I hope you pick up what I'm putting down, man. Alright, peace.